I don't think it's controversial to say that October is the most exciting month of the year for baseball, though I would say that doesn't apply to every fan base. Playoff baseball allows for the best that this sport has to offer. The situations of highest intensity, the most memorable moments you can see on a diamond, and a personal favorite of mine, some of the best calls you'll ever hear. Every baseball fan that I know has their favorite postseason memories, moments, series, and today I wanted to talk to you about one of mine. The 2008 American League Championship Series is my favorite postseason series of all time, and today I'm going to tell you why it should be yours too. But first, this video is brought to you by Out of the Park Baseball 23. Having been licensed by MLB, MLB Players Incorporated, and KBO, Out of the Park includes teams and players you can be in charge of ranging all the way back to the late 19th century, including full minor league and KBO rosters. That's over 130 years of content to work with. Out of the Park is the gold standard for baseball simulation publicly available. So much so that it's even used by Major League Baseball personnel. Giants manager Gabe Kapler and Twins manager Rocco Baldelli use Out of the Park themselves to help optimize their team's on-field performance. You have complete creative control over how your team is run, ranging from simple roster decisions to finances to the ballpark itself. If a real GM can do it, then you can too. That's including, of course, making in-game decisions and simulating any baseball situation limited by only your imagination. You can also build your own team and compete with players around the world with Perfect Team Mode, a game mode exclusive to this franchise, which puts all the power in your hands, and lets you take your team into battle against other players and their teams in your typical 162 game plus playoffs format, as well as a unique tournament-style gameplay. You can start living out your greatest baseball fantasies and download Out of the Park Baseball 23 on PC by clicking the top link in the description box of this video. A big thank you to Out of the Park Baseball 23 for sponsoring today's video. The 2008 ALCS had every ingredient of a great postseason series. An interdivision matchup between two incredibly talented teams separated by only 2 games in the regular season standings, the second and third best in the American League. This series went the full 7 games, 5 of which were decided by 2 runs or fewer. The series included one of the best postseason games I have ever seen, featuring one of the greatest comebacks I've ever seen. And this wouldn't have earned the subjective title I'm giving it without some history being made too, and it surely was. For starters, this was Tampa Bay's first ALCS appearance in ever. There were also more home runs hit in this series than any other playoff series in the history of Major League Baseball. And it had Big Papi. Who doesn't like Big Papi?
Go Shorty, it's your birthday.
Among other reasons, these things made 9-year-old me fall in love with baseball when I was still an up-and-coming fan. And for that especially, I think about that series all the time, to this day. At this point, the Tampa Bay Rays had only been around for a decade. This was the first year in franchise history they had even been to the playoffs.
Holy poly. Wow.
These two teams looked wildly different a year before this, but they took more similar paths to get there than you might have expected. As I said, these teams had nearly identical regular season records. Both Tampa and Boston came into this having won their divisional matchups in the same number of games. They both won their first 2 ALDS games, both dropped Game 3, and both clinched in 4. And they both had leadoff hitters with really cool names. Just one season earlier, the Red Sox were the World Series champions and baseball's best team at 96 and 66, while the Rays finished as baseball's worst team with the exact opposite record at 66 and 96. They were on exact opposite ends of the baseball hierarchy a year before, but these teams were at this point on an even playing field. In the 7 games, they combined for 71 runs and 118 hits, averaged just over 10 runs per game between the two. At least one of them scored at least 8 runs in games 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, game 1 was the only game either of these teams was shut out. Daisuke Matsuzaka pitched for Boston, matching up against James Shields for Tampa. Daisuke struck out 9 Rays without allowing a run, and actually wound up taking a no-hitter into the 7th inning, one of the longer no-hit bids in playoff history before Carl Crawford broke it up that inning. Actually, not the last time that Carl Crawford would put a damper on Boston's playoff hopes.
Holy God, what are you showing me? Come on!
The first and winning run was created by 2 legends in Mets lore, a 5th inning sacrifice fly from Jed Lowry, given up by James Shields. Former president of the Bryce Harper fan club, Jonathan Papelbon, threw a perfect 9th inning, and the Red Sox struck first. Now, the Rays couldn't plate a single run in Game 1. Something I was taught in Little League, something I was probably learning around the same time I was seeing this series play out in real time, was that having a short memory in baseball can be a really valuable tool. And that basically just means that if you find yourself struggling, you got to try and shake it off instead of letting it weigh you down moving forward. And the Rays did exactly that. After not being able to score at all in Game 1, they scored 38 times in the next 4 games. Scoring, of course, leads to winning, and they surely did a lot of that too in those games. Now, Game 5 was my favorite game of the series and one of my favorites of all time, but you can argue that Game 2 is actually the best of the series. This was a classic from start to finish. A combined 17 runs, 24 hits, a 9-8 final score, 11 innings, and a final run time of 5.5 hours. Just about every aspect of this game was close. Both teams' starters went 4 1/3, and both teams used 7 pitchers by the end. Both teams had 12 hits, and each had 3 players homer. Both scored twice in the first, and both scored thrice in the 5th. This was a high-scoring, back and forth game up until the very end. The Red Sox struck first on a 2-run first-inning double off the bat of Jason Bay. Bless his soul. 2-0 Sox, bottom half. Evan Longoria goes deep to tie it. Top of the 3rd, Dustin Pedroia hits his first homer of the postseason to put Boston back in front. BJ Upton immediately responds the following inning with a solo shot, and Carl Crawford soon followed with an RBI single to give Tampa their first lead. Cliff Floyd led off the bottom of the 4th with a solo shot of his own, and then the Red Sox immediately responded with 3 homers in the span of 4 batters the following inning. Pedroia hit his second of the night, both of them leadoff homers, and then starting 2 batters later, Kevin Youkilis and Jason Bay went back-to-back. 6-5 Red Sox. Again, next half inning, the Rays score 3 and take the lead right back. 8-6. Again, the Red Sox respond the next half inning, Jason Bay drives in another and gets one back. We're now in the top of the 8th, it's still 8-7, 2 outs, Dustin Pedroia on 3rd. A wild pitch on a 2-0 count brings home the tying run, and the game is tied. Top 9, 2 outs, runner on 2nd, Dan Wheeler strikes out Yankees legend Jacoby Ellsbury to send it to the bottom half, tied at 8. And with 2 outs and a runner on, Papelbon strikes out Carlos Pena, strands the winning run at first, and this marathon of a game continues in extras. The Red Sox can't capitalize on 1 out and 2 runners on, so the Rays walk it off in the bottom of the 11th and the game is over. A hell of a game through and through. Tampa and Boston combined for 7 homers in Game 2, which tied the LCS record for the most all time. For as good a series as this was, though, it wasn't very balanced, and what I mean by that is, not every game was all that exciting. In fact, 2 of these games were just flat out boring. Not to say there weren't any runs scored, but rather that, in terms of competition, there was little to none. And that was clear in both Games 3 and 4. In Game 3 at Fenway, the Rays hit another 4 homers, the Red Sox couldn't hit Matt Garza, and the Rays took a 2-1 series lead with little opposition. In 4, the Rays got right back to work in the first inning, plating 3 off of Tim Wakefield on the backs of back-to-back homers from Impractical Jokers star Carlos Pena.
Now, right now.
He wasn't in the shot? You're getting in a really narrow shot, dude? Because he's in the shot, like...
All right, boys, let's get back in.
And future superhero Evan Longoria, which also happened to be his 3rd of the series already. That homer tied Carlos Beltran's record for most consecutive postseason games with a home run. Tampa led 5-0 by the 3rd, 11-1 by the 6th, and went on to win the game 13-4. The Red Sox came into this series the defending world champs, and were making their 4th ALCS appearance in the last 6 years. In what was their first ever championship series in franchise history, coming off of a season the defending worst team in baseball, the Rays managed to put together 3 straight wins after getting shut out, 2 of which they steamrolled Boston on their own turf. And, as someone who got to go there for the ALCS last year, I can personally guarantee you that that is no easy feat. A good majority of those Boston fans could be considered clinically insane. Now, if there was any team that could come back from a 3-1 series deficit, it was Boston. They overcame worse odds against the Yankees 4 years prior. They came back down 3-1 in the '86 ALCS. They actually did the same thing against Cleveland the year before this. Now, Game 5 of this series is one of my all-time favorite baseball games. There are few moments that I remember more vividly than some of the ones that came from this single game. There were other great games and moments in this series, but this is the one that made the series what it is to me. The Tampa Bay Rays were up 3-1, and they started off Game 5 pretty much the same way they started off Games 3 and 4.
Swing and a high fly ball, hammered left field, up toward that monster, and that ball is gone, a home run. First move, and there's a drive, belted down the right field line, that ball is gone, a 2-run homer for Pena. Swing and a high fly ball, deep left field. Track, wall, gone by Longoria. Swing and a high fly ball left field. Back goes Bay at the monster. That one is off the monster. 1 run scores. Here comes Iwamura around. He will score. It's a double for Upton. 2 more RBIs and 4 tonight. And it's 7-0 in the 7th. Boy, they are dancing in the streets of Tampa, St. Pete, and the Bay Area tonight. 7-0, Rays lead it. 9 outs to get, lower third up, and Grant Balfour is on to pitch.
Up 3-1 in the series and up 7-0 in the 7th inning of an elimination game, the Rays needed 9 outs for a pennant. The bottom third of the order was coming up for Boston in the 7th. Grant Balfour was in to relieve Scott Kazmir, who had pitched 6 shutout innings. You can't really ask for much more from your starter. Balfour had a 1.54 ERA in the regular season, the 4th lowest in Major League Baseball among relievers that season. Sure, he had given up that Jason Bay homer in Game 2, but he was still one of baseball's best. All he needed to do was to prevent 7 runs from scoring. It probably shouldn't have been this hard.
Lowry 1 for 12 in this series, drives one deep to right. Gross back. That ball is off the base of the wall. Lowry on his way to second, and he'll stand with a double. 2 balls and a strike. Line drive left field. Lowry to third. Line drive right field. Gross plays it safe. A run is in. They're at the corners. Swing and a drive. Deep right field. If it's fair, it is way out of here. Swing and a drive. Right field deep. Track. Wall. 1-run game. Swing, base hit right field. Cuts it around third. Gross loads up. Terrible throw. We are tied. Swing, line drive right field. We're going to Tampa. Boy, they are dancing in the streets of Tampa, St. Pete.
Damn, dude, these island too.
There were 2 outs and 1 man on base in the 7th inning. The Red Sox were down by 7 against one of the best relief pitchers in the sport. They had a 1% win probability in an elimination game, and they still won. Little Matt was in absolute disbelief. The series, by some miracle, heads back to Tampa, and the Red Sox live to see another day. Josh Beckett was looking to force a Game 7, with James Shields looking to stop this series from spiraling out of control and avoiding one of the most embarrassing collapses in sports history. Now, the Rays jumped out in front in the first. Not that the fans at home had any idea, though, because TBS accidentally forgot about one of the biggest games of the year and instead ran the Steve Harvey show on accident during most of the first inning.
I didn't know what the hell happened.
For the 3rd time this series and the 7th time that postseason, and follow along with me here, former BJ Upton, former Melvin Upton, and current BJ Upton went deep. Kevin Youkilis answered immediately in the top of the 2nd with one of his own and drove in another in the 3rd. Jason Bartlett tied it in the 5th, and again, the Red Sox immediately answered with 2 more runs of their own. Just a little more of that great back-and-forth baseball these two had played up to that point. A Jason Varitek solo shot in the 6th put Boston up by a run, and that was all they needed. Papelbon threw a perfect 9th for his 3rd save of the series, and all of a sudden, 3-1 wasn't looking all that bad. This was the 9th win in 10 elimination games for the Boston Red Sox under manager Terry Francona. As I said earlier, the Red Sox did this exact same thing the year before. In both the 2007 and 2008 ALCS, they won Game 1, lost Games 2 through 4, won Games 5 and 6, and went to a Game 7. That 2007 team won the whole thing. Winning Game 7 would make them the first team in history to come back down 3-1 2 years in a row. Not as impressive as, say, the '85 Royals, who did it in the ALCS and the World Series in the same year, but impressive regardless. No matter how Game 7 played out, to somehow claw your way out of that pit of despair in Game 5 and climb all the way up the ladder to force a Game 7, I'd argue that in and of itself is more impressive than winning the entire ALCS in some cases. But the Red Sox just couldn't finish the climb. Pedroia hit his 3rd homer of the series in the 1st, and that was the only run that the Sox could put together against Matt Garza, who threw 118 pitches in 7 innings to get his 2nd win of the series and ALCS MVP. With the bases loaded and 2 outs in the top of the 8th, Joe Maddon decided to hand the ball over to a pitcher with only a month of Major League experience for a 4-out save in a pennant-clinching game. Nearly 10 years to the day before his World Series clinching performance as a member of the Boston Red Sox, rookie left-hander David Price finished the job. The Rays won their first pennant in franchise history and closed the door on what was my favorite playoff series of all time. And who had the game-winning hit? Out of the park enthusiast Rocco Baldelli. And that actually wasn't planned at all, so that's pretty awesome. As a whole, this series probably wasn't even among the top handful in MLB history, even though it happens to be my favorite. But one thing I will say confidently though, is that it at the very least had one of the most exciting comebacks ever in both the context of Game 5 and of course, having that Game 5 comeback be the start of a larger series comeback to force a Game 7. The Red Sox couldn't pull history out of the hat for a second year in a row, but that doesn't make it any less special to me. That series had a huge impact on my love for this sport. I know all of you have your own moments and series that did the same for you. And who knows, had I not been watching, I may have never started making baseball videos in the first place. And don't kid yourselves, I know how sad you'd be if it played out like that. And honestly, any series where I get to watch a man step up to bat 32 times looking like this is probably a series that I'll enjoy. But let me know some of your favorite playoff moments or series in the comments. I am going to go through most of them. As sweet as it would have been for the Red Sox to have come back down 3-1, I am happy for the Tampa Bay Rays and their fans for having secured their first ever pennant. Going from baseball's worst team to American League champions in the span of one season, dethroning the reigning champs to do so, that's pretty damn special. If you're interested in learning more about how they did it, Mike did a video on them back in 2020 that you can check out here. But that's it. Moral of the story, appreciate the 2008 ALCS and don't ever forget it. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye!